So one of the things that I'd wished I'd had when I first started doing food photography was a guide to tell me, these are the things that you should buy for a home photography studio for food and product photography. You know, when I first started, I was just watching different photographers out there, watching YouTube videos and thinking, oh, well, if they have that, I probably need that too. And I should probably do that too, right? And before you know it, you buy a bunch of things that don't work or don't work for you and what you need. And so what I'm going to share with you here today is advice that I would have given myself when I first started to put in my home photography studio. We're not talking like top of the line, crazy professional photography studio situation. We're talking about what's going to get you up and running, what's going to last a good long time and be applicable for food photography, product photography that you can do at home. What's shaking bacon? I'm Joni Simon. Welcome to my studio. This is where I do food photography, and the goal here is to improve your food photography skills so you feel confident behind the camera. And real quick, I can't give you the full tour yet because it's not completely finished, but this is the first official video in the brand new studio. I promise, once it's all done, once the kitchen's done, I'll give you a full tour, but how's this corner? Corner looking good? Now, I'll say that this studio has been a long time coming, that I started my business at the kitchen table and then moved into a spare bedroom and then moved into a garage, and then we built in the patio of our home, which is where I've been working out over the last 3 years, and now we have this space. But what I want to share here today are the things to get you started that'll take you for the long haul, you know, making some purposeful investments in order to build your photography business and to be able to do food photography at a pro level, but at home. But before we get into that, I am excited to share with you that today's video is sponsored by the PPA. The PPA is the Professional Photographers America. It's the professional industry organization created by photographers for photographers. Now, I've been a member for a number of years now, and I recommend it to all my business students because for a low monthly price, you receive a variety of unbeatable benefits, including $15,000 worth of equipment insurance, data recovery services, and customizable contracts. Now, that $15,000 worth of equipment insurance was the reason that I first joined, because it's really the easiest way to get quality coverage for your gear. And once I became a member, it felt so reassuring to know that my gear, the most important tools in my business, were covered so that if anything happened, I had a plan. They also offer data recovery services, which are crucial, especially shooting for clients. Nothing scares me more than losing a client's files. And one of the PPA's most useful business resources is their customizable contracts. You can compare and edit a wide range of documents, including proposals, cancellation letters, model releases, copyright transfers, everything to help set your business off on the right foot. They also offer top-notch education and training, as well as credentialing, photographic competitions. The list goes on and on. So take a look at the link in my bio and use the code for a special discount on your membership. Whether you are just beginning and want to start out on the right foot, or you've been at this a while and you want to take your business to the next level, the PPA is where you need to be. So a big thank you to the PPA. Now let's jump into that home studio. All right, so number one, obviously you need a camera if you're gonna set up a home photography studio. And I have a whole video about how to navigate that first camera purchase, things to consider, comparisons of the different brands. I'll link that down below. But just as something to reiterate from that video is that a used camera can be a great place to start. I can't tell you how many pros I know out there who started on used cameras, and you can get some great refurbished cameras from different camera retailers. I do recommend that if you go the used route, making sure that there's some sort of guarantee or warranty in place. But that being said, I own several used cameras. They work like champs. I've never had issues. They just happen to be owned by somebody else before. And along those same lines, absolutely also starting off with a crop sensor camera. Ain't no shame in the crop sensor game. And actually there are certain situations where a crop sensor is going to be more helpful to you. I know that my Canon 70D, which was definitely like kind of my workhorse when I first started my business, that camera is so great for really tight kind of B-roll shots that it really became an important part of my workflow when I started doing video for clients. So absolutely starting out with a crop sensor camera, a used camera. These are all great ways that you can get started with a home photography studio without breaking the bank. So then next in the lineup of things you need for your home photography studio, of course you need that camera body, and then you also want your camera lenses. Now, I do believe that camera lenses, there's a certain amount of like personal preference in this department, but if I'm gonna give sort of a sweeping generalization to somebody who is just getting started and who is setting up a home photography studio, to me, the lens that comes with your camera, that kit lens at 18 to 55 millimeter, f4.5 generally is what you're gonna get, is great. It is gonna be really nice and multifaceted. It'll be great for doing those overhead shots. You can kind of zoom out to get that wider view, but you can still kind of zoom in to the 55 to get some good portraits and to get some, good food shots. But then my next recommendation for the next lens after that is the 50 millimeter f1.8. It is not a super expensive lens. I mean, as far as in the context of what lenses cost, great place to start. The reason to go with that lens is that you can dial back to f1.8. If you're not familiar with aperture and what that means, I've got a video linked down below, but going with that lens is going to allow for that more narrow depth of field, so you get that creamy, nice bokeh in the background. And then if you're looking for like, what's the third lens to buy? And again, this is where maybe people would fight me on this subject, but there are definitely a lot of food photographers who I think would back me up on this statement, is that then once you've really gotten to know that kit lens, you feel confident on your camera and operating in manual mode, you've proven to yourself that you're gonna do this food photography thing and that it's worth investing time and money into, then that third lens that I would personally go for would be a 100 millimeter f2.8 macro lens. If you're in the Nikon world, that's a 105 millimeter macro lens or micro lens. So you gotta do all the translation from one brand to the next. But that's effectively going to allow for those really tight, delicious, close-up detail shots that food photographers love. Now, of course, I know some of y'all who follow me religiously over on Instagram are gonna say, but Joni, you mostly shoot with your 24 to 70 f2.8. And I'll say, absolutely, you're right. But I also don't recommend when you're getting started with your first home studio to go with an $1,800 lens. Like, just not reasonable to me. You can do all the damage you need to with these other lenses that I've recommended. I will say though, when you get to that pro level, or if you just have money just sitting around to spend, a 24 to 70 f2.8 is a beautiful thing. A book that I shot last year, I shot like 99% of that book with just that one lens. It's so versatile. But again, I don't recommend starting there. So then next, I recommend a tethering cable so that you can connect your camera to a computer into a tethering software. Now, I have a video all about, and this is specifically for you Canon users out there, how to connect your Canon camera to the Canon EOS app and then be able to feed that instantly into Lightroom. It's a great workflow, worked great for me for years shooting on the Canon system. I am gonna recommend, if you're shooting pretty much anything other than Canon, to then check out Capture One. And even if you are a Canon shooter, there's a lot of cool stuff in Capture One. And we just recently did a video on that. You can kind of see some of the behind the scenes there, but it's so incredibly helpful to be able to see in live view on a separate monitor that's nice and big what's going on with your scene, so that you can just have a better sense of what that final image is gonna look like and really be much more intentional with your composition and your styling. If you haven't shot tethered, it's gonna change your life, I promise. All right, so the next step is to get a good tripod. And this is something that people will fight me on. They're like, I just really love the beauty and the flexibility of shooting freehand. And I'm not here telling you to stop shooting freehand, but I am telling you that there is a time and a place and a benefit to shooting on a tripod. Now, what I will say too though, and I'm gonna do an in-depth video on tripods in a couple weeks, so stay tuned for that. But one of the things that I think does make a difference in your tripod experience is, first of all, having one that's heavy duty enough that you can trust it. Like, if you're not holding your camera, whatever is should be sturdy, but then also getting a proper head that is easy to work with. Now, when I first got started, I was using like a pan head, which is much more for doing video work and was not super conducive to doing food photography work. And it caused frustration, and it was not an enjoyable experience until I went to a photography workshop where the instructor was using a grip head, and suddenly I'm like, oh, there's a different way to do this thing. And oh, that makes a lot more sense and that's a lot more flexible. And so that's why then I ended up going with a grip head, and is personally what I really like for my own personal tripod. There's plenty of folks out there who prefer a geared head, which is much better for precision work, product photographers. Geared head is going to be the direction you go in. Again, we're going to get more into that in a whole dedicated video about tripods. But for now, I just want to tell you, tripod is definitely a must-have if you're going to have a home photography studio. Now, along those same lines, I'll say it's also really helpful. This is not a must-have, but is definitely something that for me personally, I just enjoy doing food photography much more, especially when shooting tethered, when you have the ability to mount that camera overhead. So whether that's investing in a tripod that has an articulating arm or going with the CStand method that I utilize, I will tell you a CStand is a great thing to have in a photography studio, but depending on how much space you're working with, you know, if you're like when I very first started my photography business and I was like at the kitchen table, now I did actually have a CStand just hanging out in the kitchen back in the day. So, you know, it's up to you how much aesthetically you need your house to look like not a photography studio. But at some point, investing in a CStand, whether that to be mounting your camera overhead or to affix lights to, or to hang scrims or to hang cards, like there are so many different things you can do with a CStand that are incredibly helpful for food photography. So at a certain point, investing in a CStand is going to be super recommended. So then next on the list is some sort of diffusion material. And typically the way that we're going to see this, and kind of the easiest and most economical way that you're going to do this, is by getting a 5-in-1 reflector. And I do recommend getting a larger one of these. Now I have one of the giant ones, and I'm going to show you right here, right now, how to fold it up. All right, so start by unfolding it. Don't hurt anybody. Don't hit yourself. Don't hit your table like I just did. You can see we just pop this in a window, but here's the tricky part. And I know there's tons of y'all out there who just have these assembled all the time because you don't know how to fold it, but I promise you can do it. I don't have like super long arms. I'm not a super tall person. So you start off, let me show you the back side. So you see how I like hoisted my body into it so that I can get my arms right here, and you can see that this is effectively, I call it like a taco, right? You can see that this is bent like that, bent like that. Get the full visual. Then what we want to do is take the top of the taco here and bend it into the bottom, right? And so then what this does is these two outside parts of it start to crisscross one another. Fold it down into it, drop it, and that's how we do the reflector. Easy. That's how you know you're a pro, how fast you can do that. We should time ourselves. Aren't you so excited to go try to fold one of these up now, right? Like if you own one of these and you've just always left it open, now hopefully you're empowered to go try to fold it up. But what I will say is you don't have to go with this exact size. There are smaller ones depending on your own particular needs. This one I do like because it's pretty much the size of a sliding glass door. If you ever want to put it up over one of those to help diffuse, you know, if you've got direct light coming through a window and you want to soften that, you just pop that in the window, super easy. But I'll say too, I also use these diffusers also with my artificial lights, and that's both my continuous lights for video work as well as my strobes for still photography. So these are a very versatile, something you'll use in a lot of different situations, a lot of different lighting. It's just nice to have a nice large diffuser. And so speaking of light, next on the list, and I would say this is not necessarily something you have to do from day one, like you don't necessarily need to start here, but something to dive into sooner than later is getting into artificial lighting. And I say this because I know for me, I put it off for a long time thinking I get the sun is free, this is great, and it is, absolutely. But at a certain point, especially if you're shooting product photography and you need consistency across a whole group of images for a client, or if you're shooting a cookbook or you're shooting different things where we need to maintain consistency, or if you're a parent of small children, such as myself, and you need to shoot at all hours of the day and night, that we don't have to worry about what's going on with the sun and timing our shoots, I just highly recommend getting into and understanding artificial lighting. And if you need a gear guide, sort of like where to start and what to consider based on your particular needs, your particular budget, I have a whole artificial light gear guide. It's linked down below. Go check that out. Again, I'd say don't necessarily need to start with that at day one, but consider getting into it sooner than later. All right, next on the list then is a set of Sawhorses. And I feel like I'm a broken record at this point. I did a video on this. I did do a video on this. This is maybe the video that brings all the videos together. But maybe when you're first starting out, you're shooting shooting on your kitchen table, which is absolutely where a lot of us start out, that's great. But when you get to the place where maybe you're in a dedicated room in your house and you don't have a kitchen table or you're not sure what table to buy, I just recommend from a flexibility standpoint, going with that 2 Sawhorse setup and getting a board on top of it. It's gonna afford you a lot of ability to put light stands close to it or C-stands, or just orient things and move things around a little more quickly. It's also gonna be really stable, because especially too if you're shooting video and like if you're doing those top down, like sped up hands and pans videos, you don't want your table like rocking around, because I know like some of my kitchen tables, they've not always been like perfectly level and they kind of wobble a little bit. You don't want that if you're shooting food videos. You want that thing super stable so you don't get like shaky footage. So highly recommend 2 Sawhorses and a board. And if you want to refer to that past video where I talk more about tables and shooting surfaces, I got that link down below. All right, so next up on the list are A-clamps and gaff tape. And these are 2 things that I'm like, where were these my whole life? Like once I discovered them and I'm like, why didn't somebody tell me? Well, this is me here telling you right now, these are super helpful to have for food photography, is the ability to clamp things in place or to hold things up. Like A-clamps, I get the 2-inch A-clamps, super duper nice to just hold up a card or to attach something to a light stand, or if you just need to put a sheet up somewhere, grab some A-clamps, clamp things down, or clamp some wires. And there's infinite uses for A-clamps. And same thing with gaff tape. Sometimes you just need to tape something up, but you don't necessarily want to deal with duct tape, which will leave a sticky residue. You want to use something that is photography grade, professional grade, but at the same time isn't going to jack your stuff up. Gaff tape. And I have it in both black and white. Super helpful, if we need to tape some boards together or different things like that, depending on the job we're doing. Get some gaff tape. Now, of course, something that I feel like you've probably already watched these videos on my channel, because they are by far some of the most popular videos on this channel. And so you're already like hip to this jive, but knowing that you will also at some point want some backgrounds and surfaces. If you've missed those videos, they're linked down below. And then also getting into the crazy world of props and styling implements and all. I mean, this gets out of control real fast. So I just need to have you be warned that if you're getting into food photography, it may take over your house, which has effectively happened. We've doubled the square footage here at the Simon Ranchito, and half of the house is now studio. And then something too, again, you've seen me use these on the channel before if you've spent any time around here, is having some white cards and some black cards that you can use for bouncing our light, manipulating our light, those black cards for blocking light, or using those for negative fill cards. I'll link some helpful references of past videos that I've used cards in before, but those we need those all the time as food photographers. Now, something that you don't have to have, and absolutely isn't like somewhere to start, but something that will be nice to have at a certain point, especially if you start to shoot more artificial lighting and more strobes, is to have a really large V-flat. And this one that I have, I'll link it down below. I bought this for a cookbook shoot when we were doing a lot of portraits, because I needed something that was like person-sized bounce card. But these are also super helpful for tabletop photography to create some really cool like diffuse light by bouncing the light off the big V-flat, or really creating some moody vibes with that really large size. So it's not something, again, that you need right away, but it is something maybe to put on a wish list at a certain point. This is just a really nice thing to have. And again, so many different uses, super versatile. And so if I could make, like, share and turn back time and tell my younger self, hey, don't go buy those ring lights. Don't go buy the Lowell Ego light. Don't buy that Gorilla Pod. You'll never use that thing. Here's the list of things that you will love and that you will use all the time and will be some frequent flyers in terms of your gear in your studio. These things would be it. So I hope you found this helpful. I hope to save you some money so you don't have to go out there and buy things that are not going to be helpful to the work that you're doing. And I want you to feel empowered to shoot in your own home, to shoot in your home photography studio. So much of the way that the world is shifting in this day and age is to working from home, obviously. And so food photography is a great thing that you can do right in the comfort of your own kitchen. Don't be ashamed of that. Be proud of it. Be excited to share your skills with the world. Post about it. But I digress. I hope you have a fantastic day. I hope you stay out of trouble, and I'll see you soon, okay? Bye.